Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to Building a Bigger Competitive Future with Derrick Daye. My name is Colin Mahan, and I'm a program manager at the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the Nasdaq Center is a nonprofit dedicated to enabling entrepreneurs from all over the world to realize the maximum potentials and grow. As you may have just seen in the chat, the Nasdaq Center, along with our partner Mentor Cloud, launched a free mentor matching platform for entrepreneurs called Mentor Makers. You can create your own advisory board to guide and inspire you with in-the-moment mentorship from topic experts and professionals dedicated to providing exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So you can find or become a mentor today by using the link in the chat. Mentorship matters to all entrepreneurs. Their success is dependent on it. Now, none of what we do here at the center could be possible without all the amazing support from our sponsors, including Nasdaq, Lehigh University, Bank of the West, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, and BPM. We're grateful and humbled by their contributions. Quick housekeeping, we're going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the event, so please submit your questions for our speaker in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. I hope to get to them all. Before we get started, during these still unique times, we're curious on how sentiment is among the entrepreneurs we work with. So I'm going to quickly launch a poll to let us know how you're doing. Q4, everybody, here we go. All right, how are we doing out there across the globe in entrepreneur land? Let's see, optimism's at the top of the rise, but totally understand that there is just a little bit of survival mode out there and a little bit of anxiety. So I'm going to end this poll and share those results. Hopefully, our presentation today will help these sentiments increase to the optimism category. So without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our special guest in the chat, Derrick Daye. He's a managing partner and brand strategist at the Blake Project. Derrick, welcome. Happy to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here, and I'm happy to share some insights.
Awesome.
I just getting a little bit of a, here we go. Okay. So you're in the right place if you're here to build a bigger future. A lot of my talk today is going to be about helping you build a brand that makes people feel like this. And a big part of that is creating wow moments. So let's get into it. First, a little bit about me. I'm also on my own entrepreneurial journey. I'm a founder. I founded a business 18 years ago, a brand consultancy, and I've been doing this work a long time. And my hope for our time together today is that you can take away some real world tools and techniques that you can use to build your own brand. So just a little snapshot here about the Blake Project. We are helping clients around the globe in all stages of development, including certainly startups and emerging brands. And the interesting thing about this kind of work, it doesn't matter how big a business you have. Because the fundamentals of brand management, they remain the same. So the same things that EA Sports are trying to do, or Unilever are trying to do, it also applies to you. You know, what you're trying to get done as far as connecting with those that matter most to your future. And the same tools are used to help you get there and build big, powerful brands. So a look at our time together here. We'll start with what are brands, just a quick real snapshot of that, some thoughts on building emotional connections, which are absolutely critical to your success. And then I want you to have a pen and paper handy. I've got an exercise for you that will help you define your brand essence, and I'll explain what that is. And then, of course, some thoughts on differentiating your brand, some concepts for competitive advantage, and then a thought on what we're all really here to do as entrepreneurs. So, I just got to start this talk by saying you can't really talk about building brands unless you talk about what is a brand. And that's because marketers have done a very bad job of marketing. There's over 10 accepted definitions. Some of these you'll recognize. Some of them you perhaps even use. They're all right in their own ways. The two that you hear the most are the third one there, the source of a promise to the customer. And then my favorite is the last one, which is a brand is a sum of all experiences a customer has with you. It's the totality. It's everything coming together that creates the brand in someone's mind. And of course, we know that brands are not owned by you. They're owned by your customers, and they're owned in the mind. So also, we can't really talk about how to build brands unless we consider the world around us. We have to understand the context in which these brands need to perform or come to life. And consumers are changing. So just a quick snapshot of what we're facing today as entrepreneurs and brand stewards. And that's what you are as an entrepreneur. You're the ultimate brand champion of your organization. There's a deep mistrust of institutions and big brands. So brands are stepping up, smaller ones, and even some of the bigger ones are starting to catch on. And to address that and trying to do things to build more trust, we need to have transparency and honesty. These are mandates today. And of course, people want brands to fit into their lives. They want them there for those important moments. And now we have something where brands need to fix the world because the governments and other institutions just don't have the trust that they used to. That creates a big opportunity for brands. They're playing a bigger role. And of course, we know there's a deep sense of community and sharing. So you need to be not just where you want your customers to be, but where they are. You need to be part of a community and build a community around your value. And of course, as we know, consumers are fickle today. They're the most educated consumer that's ever shopped the planet. When they find something else about a competitor that is more attractive to them, they're gone like that. So we have to take these things into consideration. But something else needs to be considered too. And that desperately, the world needs the warmth of human-centric brands now more than ever. Now, this is close to the work that we do in building emotional connections. So, and by the way, this isn't some kind of flimsy thing. This is backed by science. 100% of our customers' decisions are made based on emotion. So you need to build this human side to your brand, regardless if you're working on something for B2C or B2B. And I argue that we've actually moved on to another place called B2P, which is business to people. And to build that human side, think about the most likable people in your world, the most successful people in your world. In many ways, they possess these 6 characteristics. Does your brand possess them? That's a question for you. And I'll be asking you lots of questions during my talk today. Hopefully that will stimulate you to think about, what am I creating? What kind of value am I creating in this world? And is it worthy of a strong human connection? So over the past 18 years, one thing we've really learned is if you're going to lead today, regardless of the stage of development you're in, you need to have 3 things. You need an emotional advantage, how customers feel about you. A distinctive advantage, how can they recognize you in this sea of sameness? And we'll be talking more about that particular one in the middle. And then a connective advantage, how customers engage with you. You need to have these to be able to earn a place in the future. I think this quote by Donald Kahn really brings it all together. Reason leads to conclusions, emotions lead to action. You know, for people, certainly love is an emotion, but for brands, it needs to be an action. We need to move people to do something, to engage with us, to help us on our journey in making impact. A thought here that I think is really important for you to understand is that people buy meanings. They're not buying products and services, they are buying meanings. And if you have a real strong meaning, you're able to go into other places with your business and move away from things if that value is no longer relevant. Look at IBM here. They used to make that hardware. They used to make the computer you see. They were able to successfully move into other places like professional services, completely away from this space, because they stood for something more than what they actually made. And that's what you want to create early on in these embryonic stages of your brand. Or even if you're joining me from a more established brand, it is about meanings. So sometimes that means you may have to shift what you've been doing to create that greater meaning. Here's another example. Coca-Cola. You may not know, it's the third shoe brand in Brazil. How are they able to do that? They stand for something more than that brown, sugary liquid. So one of the ways that we can get to that place is this concept of brand essence. And I'm building up to that first exercise that I talked about. Every brand has this brand essence. It's the most important understanding that we want to have for our customers. A little bit about it. And in brand strategy work, which I just want to share that there's some parts of this talk that are centered on tools and techniques that we use in the field to help people build brands. And I'm giving you an inside look of that. And brand essence is just one of those tools. So this lives in a strategy document within your organization. Everyone follows it. More on that in a second, but it's really about who you are versus what you make. What are you at the core? It's not an outside slogan. It's not an advertising campaign. It's that thing. It's that purpose that you have in the world. It's simple and concise. So it's easy for people in your organization to understand what it means. And that's because it means something important to them. They all get it. Everyone's on the same page. When you create these, it's okay to have them aspirationally attainable, meaning they may not be something you can do right now, but it's within reach, maybe 3 to 5 years. But if it's something really crazy 100 years from now, it's not going to do you much good. They need to be timeless and enduring, so they can stand the test of time, because people will need new things from you as time goes on, and it's got to stand that test of time. And a good brand essence is also extendable, so it can help you get into new business categories. So a little bit more on this, and then I'll have some real world examples in just a second. But as I said, it's the heart and soul of a brand. It sounds very simple as far as its format. It's only 3 words: adjective, adjective, noun. But it's a constant across all product categories. It's for internal audiences. And it doesn't have to be differentiating. That's something that the brand promise does. Brand essence always stays the same. It's who you are. And as a developed human, it's pretty much who you will be the rest of your life once you're 17 or 18. And so brand essence is absolutely a key tool that all established brands used. Here's some examples. Nike Authentic Athletic Performance. So think about this for a second. If Nike is considering a new shoe design, and a new endorsement deal, a new fabric, it's either aligned with this or they don't do it. It's very simple. Everyone uses this as a lens for decision making. And with thousands of decisions made a day, you need to have everybody thinking about one common thing when they're making decisions. That's what keeps companies on brand. Here's Adobe Accessible Creativity. And these brand essences are actually used at these companies, and they may or may not resonate with you, but they resonate to those people inside. I picked a few that should be pretty obvious. You should be able to draw a line from the brand to their essence. Here's Starbucks, Rewarding Everyday Moments. New employee, new price point, soft seating, right down to the toilet paper. If it rewards everyday moments, you do it. If not, you're going to move away from your brand. So you have to have thought this through. And this isn't just about brand decisions. It's also about business decisions. So do you know what your brand essence is? Adjective, adjective, noun format. You can draw it out in your paper. It's usually easier to start with the noun. So if you were doing one for Albert Einstein, just as a warm-up, you might say brilliant, brilliant, impactful genius. And it should be very clear that, yeah, I could see that fitting with Einstein. But think about what the brand essence could be for your brand. It is so critical that you have one and you know it. So if we think of the market like a archery target, we know that most of the points, or most of the points, are when you hit the bullseye, right? Now think about if you only had one arrow, you'd want to hit that bullseye. This is the bullseye, right? This is it. This helps you make sure that that arrow is going in the right place. So this next part of my talk today is about overcoming overcommunication. And you'll probably detect that I'm trying to squeeze a lot in, but it's all important. Here we are in an overcommunicated society, and the facts are we're either noise or we're signal, one or the other. So we need to make sure that we create enough value to those that matter most to us, that we're clearly a signal to them. So how do you get there? And, what are some of the tools and techniques? That's coming up. But first, I want to share what happens if we don't think about that. What happens if we don't do any of this strategy work and we think it's an external thing that we don't have to do for 3 years? Well, bad things happen. First, the brand gets defined for you by customers. See, if you don't define what your brand is, it gets defined for you. That's how the mind works. Now, your customers will all be guessing. Strategy and guesswork, they're at odds with each other. Your employees have no North Star. They don't know what this is all about. They can take some educated guesses, but again, they're making decisions based on those educated guesses. The senior leadership team or the founders, they haven't shared anything with them. This creates issues. Even if you're growing, you're wildly successful, you will eventually have to do these steps. It's just coming back and having to do the steps with less resources, or what I hear a lot from founders is, if I had only done this 3 years ago, I would have made this decision, and we would have saved this or made this. Strategy is about focus, and we need to be focused. That's the key. This is when it starts getting tough. The brand gets defined for you by competitors. This is never a good thing. They're setting the narrative in the marketplace. They're defining what you're all about. And that puts you at a huge disadvantage. And then, of course, once people have encoded something in their mind about you and your brand, it's very hard to get them to change their minds. Minds hate to change. In the worst cases, brands have to change their names. Usually there's some big event that's so bad, or maybe there's a merger with a stronger brand. That's another way. But you've really got to have a handle on what you're encoding in people's minds. So that takes us to differentiation. You're trying to separate yourself from others in the marketplace. And, that's going to require change. It's going to require change regardless of if you're a new company or an older company. Someone's going to have to do something different in the marketplace. And Peter Drucker, the father of modern business management, I've got to quote him here. If you want something new, you have to stop doing something old. And so even if you've only been in business 2 months, you've got to stop doing something old if you don't have a strategy. It's time to start thinking about that now. Differentiation also requires discipline. Branding is the art of sacrifice. It's saying, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to do those 5 things. It's no is your friend in strategy. It keeps you on the right path. Relentless focus is also key in differentiation. You have to have that and resist the temptations to go places that your brand doesn't belong. Relentless consistency. This is so key because consistency is what builds trust. We trust behaviors over time. We've got to see it a few times, and I can trust that this coffee is always going to stay the same. This experience is always going to be that way. And if you don't have a strategy, what happens is you start getting all over the road. You don't have consistency. Therefore, you have much lower levels of trust. And trust really is what powers brands today. But as I said, no is your friend here. You've got to be focused on no and be ready to say it a lot. Now, I want to just share this real quick, this positioning model, because brand positioning is key to all of this work. And I'm sure you've heard the term, but it is a sweet spot. You know, what's really important to those that matter most to us, what are we really good at doing, and what are competitors not addressing, or would it be very hard for them to address? This is the part where we get into what's called brand promise. This is the part about what's happening on the outside, where brand essence is about on the inside. So here's the anatomy of a good brand promise. It's compelling, believable, understandable, differentiating, admirable, and endearing. You know, it helps, it brings people to you. That's that emotional connection component. Here's the model that we use. So only your brand, that's the easiest part of the exercise, delivers this relevant, differentiated benefit in an era of this marketplace trend driving customer need and brand relevance. In an era of is important because if that changes, that's a signal to you that you need to revisit your brand positioning and, of course, to your target customer. And today, the most important thing is, where's the proof? Where's the evidence? And if you don't have any, you need to create some real evidence. That's absolutely critical. We've got to back up our talk. Here's an example of Volvo. So they're trying to own one word in the mind, and that's safety. And this is the brand promise that they use. So again, this is for internal consumption, but you could see an ad agency being inspired on how to communicate that through their advertising and to their employees. It all emanates from this idea that they're safer than any other of their competitors. And you can build real strong brands around an emotionally driven promise like that. So here's a quote from Rumi, who's a Persian philosopher from thousands of years ago. And he's kind of come into our lives today because he's got a big point about branding. And that is, what you seek is seeking you. So what I mean here is that when you put a stake in the ground and you say, this is what my brand's all about, then you signal to all those people in the universe that are also looking for what you're about. They have the shared values. They're there with you and they're looking for you. But they're not going to be able to find you if you have not put that stake in the ground and defined what you're about, what you stand for, and what you stand against. So I want to share some concepts for competitive advantage now. And just like the adage goes, if you're planning, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. And so let's just take a look in the beginning here of why brands fail. That's important here to think about. There's a lot of reasons for failure. There's 10 here, and I'll share the 10th in a moment. But you can see, no competitive point of difference, poor quality, price, value, market disruption, consumer backlash. But it's interesting, the 10th one is the one that we see the most. Most reasons for failure are a direct result of not having a process in place that provides the right information at the right time to make critical decisions. And what is that process? It's your brand strategy. When there's a crisis, everyone goes and looks at their brand strategy. I mean, what's going to keep us honest with our strategy? And So that's key. And as you can see so far, that's really the core of my talk. Know what that strategy is. So when those things happen, you have that. You have that as a guide. Brand strategy is a lens. It's a lens that helps you build strong emotional connections and take you to that place that you are hoping of right now as an early stage founder. Now, I have another model to show you here, and it's still relevant today. It was actually back in the 90s, Hallmark, who was some would say a pioneer in brand management when it comes to building a strong emotional connections. They discovered that leading brands had these 5 things. Now, my earlier model was really based on the emotional connection side, but let's look. First, here's awareness. So 80% of marketing budgets are spent on awareness. How people without an ability to find you or to actually know about you, there won't be any business. So you have to start with awareness. Relevant differentiation. So this is really the work that we've talked about so far. How are we differentiating our brands? And it's not enough just to be different. It has to be a meaningful difference. Value, what makes you worth it? Now, value could be, you save me time. There's convenience. You're right across the street. This model drives brands. And what we see here is that any leading brand that you pick will be firing on all of its cylinders through this model. Accessibility, how easily are you found? So accessibility, Coca-Cola is trying to be accessible to everyone in the world, while Louis Vuitton is only trying to be accessible to a small few, which is in luxury. This model changes a little bit, as of course, that's what drives their pricing strategy. But everyone still needs to be accessible to your brand. And lastly, emotional connection. So what we like to do is look at this and say, where are we here? Are people aware of our brand? Are we different? What value are we creating? Are we accessible? And what does that emotional connection look like? Is it strong? Is it weak? So here's a thought that I think is also really important here. Every hero needs a villain. Think about that. Would any of these heroes be heroes if there weren't villains? No. We need a villain for that contrast. And I think it's important for you to know who your villain is. So the villain is not a competitor. I repeat, it's not a competitor. It's that thing out there that competes or conflicts with your purpose. It's that thing out there that if you eliminated, your customers would see you as the hero. Tom's Shoes does it here. Their villain is this issue of children that can't afford shoes. So they have a 1-for-1 program, which I'm sure you know of. You buy a pair of their shoes, they send a free pair to a child in need. What is your villain in this world? And that, of course, needs to be tied to your purpose, right? It's that big thing that's standing in the way. It's so important to know what that is so you can attack it with everything you have. Another thought here, create value that you can own. And I think this is really important to keep you on track when you're creating new value as an entrepreneur, or you should be creating new value. Resist the temptation of copying from others. Look at Batman here. So I chose Batman. And here's the question, right? What would the world miss if Batman did not exist? Batman's the only superhero that had to do it on his own. He wasn't born with any of the gifts that Superman had, Aquaman, or the others. So think about it. What would we miss with no Batman? So Batman has a place in this world that he can uniquely own. Do you, is the question. So some more thoughts here as I'm kind of, I've got a couple more minutes to share a few more slides. And These may seem a little random, but they're not. They're all tied to strategy. But think about your customer again. You're trying to build that emotional connection. Who will they become by participating in your brand? The concept of join the brand is really key. We want people to be a part of what we're building today, what we're making today, not just distant consumers that buy things from us. And on that note, how can you make your brand useful to people regardless if they buy? You would have created something very powerful if you did that. Empowering others to create value. That's Tom's shoes, right? They're empowering their customers to create value for somebody else. How are you doing that? With a shared purpose and shared values, you can achieve that with your customers. Everyone's in it together. What meaningful purpose do you have? You need to figure that out. Try to tie whatever you're doing to humanity. Try to tie whatever you're doing to a cause bigger than making money. And of course, probably obvious and probably something you thought of before starting the business, what should be unlearned in this space and what new ways should be introduced. We have to keep kind of pressing on ourselves, poking a stick at our idea to make sure that it's really the best it can be, and try to not get so emotionally attached to our ideas. This is when emotional connections are dangerous. We fall in love with our ideas, and then not enough other people do. So you've got to be kind of tough on yourself. A few more thoughts here, which I think it's important if you're going to grow your brand. You have to answer these questions. What would the world miss if your brand did not exist? So if the answer is not much, you still have a lot of work to do, right? If you could make your customers feel one thing, what would it be? I can't tell you how many brands that I've worked with in my career, 25 years, that did not know the answer to this. This is the core of building an emotional connection. We talked about this. We talked about it as a villain, but it can also be seen as an enemy. What is conflicting with your purpose? And in an over-communicated society, what's the minimum a customer needs to recognize you? Radical simplification is your friend here. And it will help you be a signal and not noise. And if you were asked for evidence of your claims, would you have enough? Absolutely critical. So Martin Luther King here inspired a lot of people. He helped strengthen a movement. And for some people, even helped create a movement. As entrepreneurs, you're doing something bigger than perhaps you've ever done before. You're bringing something new in the world that is creating value like never before. So, and hopefully it started with a dream that will inspire others. That's key. That's what you're here to do, is change something for the better. If you're not on the path, then I think you need to rethink being an entrepreneur. If it's just about making money for you, I don't have a lot of hopes for your brand in the future. You've got to build that human side. That's absolutely key. And after all this work is done, and you step back, think about, how is this strategy going to change what we're striving for here? How's it going to shift our energy? You've got to use the strategy. It's not enough to have a big idea. You can have the most amazing idea, not enough. It's your ability to execute on it. That's what matters. And you need a strategy for that. You need to think it through. If you're going to build that stronger competitive future, you need to think it through. And with that, just a snapshot of how you can connect with me, and LinkedIn is a good place to do that too. I'm easily found. I like to be approachable, and when I can, be accessible. So I hope this was helpful. And Colin, I guess that's my cue to hand it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Derrick. Love the presentation, love the content. Let's jump into Q&A. Before we do that, I'm going to launch a quick poll that will help guide our discussion. So what's keeping you up at night? Is it finance, sales, marketing, scale, pivot, team, or surviving? So let us know. This question will not only help our Q&A with Derrick today, but also will help inform the future programs that we host for you, the entrepreneurs that we serve. Appreciate you taking a moment and drop your questions in the Q&A box if you haven't already. And I'm going to share these results. So looks like it's a pretty big mix. Many of them I'm sure are tied to branding. So let's jump into some of these questions. All right. Rosa had a question. Thanks for the question, Rosa. How do you stand out in a saturated market with big behemoth name brands?
How do you stand out in a saturated market with big behemoth
name brands?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a long answer and a short answer. I'm going to go with the shorter answer. You know, this really depends on your commitment to creating new value. It's your commitment to also creating a difference that clearly sets you apart from others. Don't be intimidated by these big brands. Actually, when you get inside of these big brands, a lot of them are nervous about this age of disruption that we're living in, and they're not sure they're going to stay relevant. So you have an advantage. You have this underdog advantage. You can tell stories, you can take risks that they can't. So, just an idea, there was an airline coming up against a very big airline in the UK. So they filed a lawsuit just to get the media attention that it was unfair that they had to compete against a bigger airline. Now, that's a frivolous lawsuit, but they got all of that media attention. So you need to stand up as a rebel in the category or a challenger in the category. That's going to earn you the attention. Now, I don't know enough about your business. I don't know if you're just trying to make another pair of sneakers. I can tell you that the world has plenty of those. I'm hoping that if that were the case, you would wrap that sneaker in value and give it something that the world desperately needs. Maybe it's more earth-friendly, something like that. So that's kind of general, but I would need more to help you. But I would just say, don't be intimidated. Don't give up on your dream, but also make sure that it's a dream that is going to create a lot of value for a lot of people.
Awesome. That's helpful. And Derrick, I believe we are distributing the PDF version of these slides after. So do you mind not sharing your screen so we can see your smiling face for people who are asking questions? Awesome. All right, here we are. Let's see. Oh, so of your list of top 10 reasons brands fail, Tom was interested in learning of a real live example of number 10, why brands fail. The number 10 was the lack of process in place to make a critical decision.
Yeah. So I would use, there's lots of reasons why brands fail, but I will use this Borders books. You probably haven't heard of those, but they actually used to be around. Amazon killed them. And one of the reasons is because on the back end, the senior management team decided to let Amazon fulfill their orders, which gave all the data to Amazon, a mistake. But that's relevant to this because had they had the right strategy in place at the right time, they would have seen that that is being off brand. Full disclosure, when companies fail this way, you're usually not going to find anything online that tells you that's why they failed. But I've actually seen companies fail years later that I knew that they were struggling when I worked with them. And it goes back to my earlier comment of it's not enough to have a great strategy or a big idea. You have to execute on that. So what you'll find is, senior executives not consulting that that strategy and not using it. So using it is just not using it is just as bad as not having it, right? So a little bit of a long answer to your question, but it's absolutely critical to have that lens in place.
Solid advice. All right. There's a couple questions here. On the subject of creating value as a solo entrepreneur, is this it? They feel a bit pressured and challenged to have a constant stream of value flowing for communities on social media challenges while providing services as a consultant. So it could be distracting. What do you recommend someone in this position who doesn't have funds to just hire a social media agency to post around their brand? How can they, as founders, entrust the brand voice we have in mind and heart is conveyed properly by those who we contract or employ? That was a lot, but yeah. I think it's how do you balance your personal and professional social media communications as a solopreneur?
Wow. So first I would say what I got, bits and pieces of this, don't get distracted by the channels. Okay. If you're creating enough value, people will find you. It's okay to be on multiple channels and want to manage those multiple channels, but it's better to pick channels that you can manage, realistically manage on your own, and be known in those channels rather than being everywhere possible and being dead some days and alive other days. As far as balancing personal and professional as a consultant, I think this is a case of deciding what's most important to you and hoping that that is most important to your target customer. If you're trying to do too many things, say, what's that saying? If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. It sounds like you're on more than one road. And this sounds like an opportunity for you to step back and say, what am I going to focus on? What am I going to focus on? There's only one of you, right? So pick a path.
Focus is a challenge for humans in general and entrepreneurs too. So we totally get it. Let's see, question here around, I'm going to expand it a little bit, but what are some of the most socially impactful brands you've come across, and what were some of their marketing tactics that helped them build trust?
Yeah, well, my favorite, and you'll notice I'm picking established brands that everybody in the audience knows, Patagonia. Patagonia knows who they are. They do not hesitate to follow their strategy. They are about the environment, right? So actually, I was talking, and look at their actions. They're not just marketing actions. They were given, I think it was $10 million as a tax break from the Trump administration, who, and there's lots of evidence to prove this, was not a fan of the environment. They took that $10 million and they donated it to a cause that was pro-environment. Patagonia, and I spoke to them around this time, they had a great opportunity because for the first time, they had the biggest villain their brand could have hoped for. You have somebody with a huge platform that is against everything you stand for. That was a positive for them. It elevated them and their cause. So it was very crystal clear what Patagonia was all about. Your question about, an example in marketing tactics, it really isn't all about marketing tactics. It's about the entire organization, the behavior, everybody walking in step and moving in the same direction. That is, again, brings us back to strategy. So if you want it, regardless of the business you're in, I'm pointing you to Patagonia. Don't be afraid to take a stand, know what you stand for, know what you stand against, and then go all in. Go all in your decisions. That's the thing that entrepreneurs can do. They can take more risks. And you know what? You often lose to people that take risks. in life, in business, in sports. Another thing I would say, it's hard to beat somebody that just won't quit. So, keep that in mind, but be courageous. Go out and be courageous. If you're really trying to make a difference and you really have something of value, then go all in on it and follow the Patagonia model.
Love that. Well, speaking of being agile as an entrepreneur, tips for adapting effectively to new trends.
Yeah, I have some. So, I believe you have to be in possession of the truth. The possession of the truth is actually knowing what the private voice of your customer is saying to themselves, about you, about your competition. And to access that, it's usually research. Now, research can be expensive, but that shouldn't stand in the way. There's other ways to find out. What you need to try to do, if you're going to stay on top of trends and play that game, you need to out-listen your competition. And what I mean by that is you need to be talking to more people than your competition. Maybe you're constantly doing polls on Facebook or some other places. But you've got to be overly engaged. You've got to build a community that wants to help you succeed and is constantly giving you feedback. That's how you do it. That's how you can, you first have to have, right? You first have to have the data, and then you can translate that and inform your strategy with that. You want to have the voice of your customer at the table in decisions, right? And to do that, that's where research comes in. There'll be, and I know there'll be people on this call that says, geez, I just don't have any money for any of this stuff. I just want to point out the most successful entrepreneurs did not let that stop them. They found a way. And actually, the best ideas aren't even in our marketplace. There just happened to be the idea that was driven by someone with the most persistence. They could, endurance, because people give up on their ideas too soon. So, go all in. As I've said before, you've got to go all in and stop making excuses. You're going to get the brand, you're going to get the business that you deserve. That's how I see things. And I also started my own business 18 years ago. Well, what did I have to do? I left a job. I had to take a loan out. So that's what you have to do. You've got to find a way. So hopefully that was helpful.
Very helpful. I love your optimism and encouragement. Let's see. I'm going to do a shameless plug, Derrick, but I'd love to hear your impact, your thoughts on this. Is when your value is in the future, what's the best way to quantify this? And my shameless plug is, if you Google, Pat, the Impact Beacon, our good friends over at City Light Ventures helped us quantify a tool, or help us develop a tool that quantifies your social and environmental impact for an external audience. But Derrick, I want to hear yours on this too. That's a free tool online, Impact Beacon. Super easy to find.
Yeah, that's the thing. We all want to have this perfect place to get to in the future, but we all need to get something now. So there's a tension between now and then. So we need to give people tangible things that they can experience this now. Now, that may be low tech. That may be, kind of a high touch thing. That may be something that's just a tease, but it's something. We need to give people something that they can believe in now, so they can see, like, if I join this brand, if I join this movement, they'll take me to that place and they can help you get there. So, it's always good to start with what people already believe. Have a belief system. What do they believe now? And try to meet them there, and then tie whatever it is you're creating to what they believe. It's always hard to get people to change what they believe. We see it in politics, front and center, right? So try to meet them there. And another idea is this: co-creation. How can you invite them into the process to help either create the new product or service? Invite them in to create the future with you that they want. So a closeness to them will help you achieve that.
I love that. Speaking of co-creation, how can a brand take endorsement elegantly, like sponsorships for video content, and help elevate both brands in partnership?
Well, it's got to be, this goes back to the fundamentals here. It's got to be absolutely authentic, right? I have to be able to believe that that endorsement is something that would occur naturally, because the two fit. Old example, still worthy of mention. There was a car brand called Oldsmobile. It's gone. Or rather Buick. It's gone. That's gone too. So they hired Tiger Woods as their spokesperson 20 years ago. It was a huge mistake because no one believed that Tiger Woods drove a Buick. They paid him $100 million. They spent way more on advertising, didn't go anywhere. It was a failure. It has to be clear and obvious to everybody that knows both brands that you two should be together. It's just a natural fit. It's got to pass that test. And I see entrepreneurs sometimes make this mistake. Somebody meets somebody that's famous and they somehow have a tie to them, and they say, well, he's got X amount of Twitter followers, and he could be our spokesperson because he's got a lot more Twitter followers than we do. But they don't fit. They absolutely don't fit with your brand. So it's actually a waste of money. It is a mistake. They're probably not aligned with your strategy because you don't have one of those. So you have to be remember what I said earlier? You have to be very careful in what you encode in people's minds. And one way to encode this image of your brand in people's minds is through the associations that you choose. So those have to be carefully decided upon as well. So I know, long answer to your question, but I hope it gave you something.
Definitely did. Let's see. Ooh, I like this one. What are the key differences between brand essence and brand promise? And what are the key similarities?
Yeah, so the key differences are brand essence is going to be timeless. It's not going to change. Brand promise will change over time because people will need new things from you. The promise you make today won't be as relevant in the future, so you're going to have to shift. Also, brand essence, it is the ultimate lens for all the decisions. Brand promise is really about what we're doing for our target customers. What are we promising them? And it also helps rally employees in around that promise and helping them think about what we came to do today and what we're going to do to deliver on that promise. So I would say those are the two big differences between brand essence and brand promise. Brand promise, and I will just close on that by saying brand promise is really about differentiation. Brand essence is this greater guide.
I love that. Let's see. Question following up on your Patagonia comment. What are your thoughts on brands with controversial strategies or controversial stances and then possible strategies? So going against current best practice somewhere in the marketplace.
Well, my stance is I'm all for it if it's creating value for your customer. And if it looks like you would belong there, if you're taking the lead, that's who you are. It's tied to what you're all about. I'm all for it. But if it's something that it's just about pounding your chest and it doesn't inspire any positive change in the world, or it matters more to you than your target customers, then I'd say it's a mistake. Remember, business is always about them. It's not about you. Why is that? they have some of the answers, but all of the money, right? So you have to be thinking about this thing we're creating here, who's it for? And they matter. It's easy to look inside and say, yeah, but I love this. And that's okay. But you're going to have to bring a lot of other people along to become a big brand.
Great answer. And we wish we had more time with you, Derrick, but we're almost at time. So if somebody was to walk away with this presentation with one key takeaway from all the amazing things you shared, what would it be?
It would be that as an early stage founder, absolutely think about your brand strategy now. This is something that it happens at the embryonic stages, just like a business strategy would. You have to think about it now. Don't wait to 3 years from now. You'll be one of those entrepreneurs that says, wow, I wish we would have done this. Now we're back at this and we have less resources.
Well, I love that. And thank you so much, Derrick, and everyone else for joining us today. Hopefully this helped with some of your branding and positioning questions. And we hope that you all can join us for our upcoming webinars. So take a look online for those. But Derrick, thank you so much for sharing your insights with our community today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
All righty. Look forward to seeing you all online soon.